So we're very excited to have Marilyn here. It's my pleasure to introduce our poet for the evening. I'm just holding up a copy of her latest book. I have a little story about this, but she is the award-winning author of 13 collections of poetry, essays, and fiction. This is Splitting Hard Ground Poems, and this won the New Mexico Book Award and the National Federation of Press Women's Book Award. And if you look on the, it's got a picture on it of the Rio Grande, in New Mexico. And I know the first time I saw this book, I thought, I've been there. And that's the case. There is a bridge over the Rio Grande here. It's maybe 10 miles west of Taos, do you think? Anyway, Jane and I, when we were there, we went out there, and so you can hike along the Rio Grande. It's a canyon. It's really beautiful, and so that was back when when I was able to run. So I did a run, and just when I was running on the bridge, there was a lightning storm that developed to the southeast, maybe 4 or 5 miles away, and it's one of those situations, you just remember that, because lightning would come down and it would hit the ground, come down, boom, and it was just really beautiful. And it was far enough away, really, for me not to be very worried about it. So that's a memory I have. Here's of when I saw Marilyn's books. Other books include Sleeping in Caves, a Himalayan memoir, and a collection of environmental essays set in the Northwest, Climate of Extremes, Landscapes and Imagination. Marilyn's also the award-winning visual artist working in collage, assemblage, and artist books. She's exhibited her work internationally in journals and books, including Lark's 1,000 Artists' Books and 500 Artist Books, Volume 2. There's a catalog of her artist books, was recently published. She's a former critic, a former book critic for the Seattle Times, teaches memoir, poetry, fiction, and an introduction to artist books. She lives here in Portland, Oregon. Quite a resume, isn't it? Would you join me in welcoming our poet tonight, Marilyn Stablein? Marilyn?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that nice introduction. And thank you to the Milwaukie Library and the Ledding Library for having this wonderful series, and to Tom and the Library Committee for coordinating the series, which is in its 9th year, so it's very impressive. And I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for coming out on this rainy night. So, just a little introduction. My grandfather, my Norwegian grandfather, immigrated to Oregon in 1895, and he settled in the Rogue River area. And so there's a branch of the family that I'm just getting to know, which is the Oregon branch. And after a couple of years, he heard about a really good offer. There was a university in California that was just beginning. It had free tuition, believe it or not, Stanford. So that was too good for him to pass up. The only requirement was that you had to have a certificate, I think they called it from normal school, which was like, was that 8th grade or something?
Teacher's college.
Oh, teacher college. Okay, well, so he was accepted, and free tuition. It's just hard to believe, isn't it? So then he went down to the Bay Area and the other branch of our family. That's where I grew up. And I went to school in Palo Alto, and during the 60s, I was at the University of California at Berkeley during the free speech year. I was a freshman, and now that was really, were you also there? No, but you heard about it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I must have gotten some of my grandfather's interest in travel early on, because I decided that I wanted to travel. And in the 60s, it was easy. I mean, it was the Peace Corps had just started, and there was a lot of opportunity to travel and teach and work. Although I didn't do that, but it was just really recommended to travel. It was part of, your education. And charter flights were San Francisco to Paris, like $250. Yeah. So I took off just planning to go for the summer. But then I realized that come September, when it was time to return, was really excited to stay, because I figured it would be a long time before I got back to Europe, and I was there. So I just kept extending my stay. And so eventually, after the summer was over, I traveled with some friends across North Africa, and then we made our way to India and North India mostly, where I ended up staying in the Himalayas in the summer, and then either Benares or Delhi or Bodh Gaya in the winters. And I got very interested in Tibetan art, calligraphy, and poetry. So I just kept extending my stay a little bit longer. I just took it season by season. So, but eventually it added up to 6 years that I was there, during which time, towards the end of that time, I met my first husband, and we got married in Nepal and had our first child in Nepal. And I'm going to be reading a couple of poems about that time. So I just wanted to mention that travel imagery sort of pops up in my poems. Also, dreams. I have a lot of dreams, and I've been keeping track of them for many years. And I have a series I call Night Travels to Tibet, which is based on dreams that I started having when I was living in the Himalayas about Tibet, and very surreal and kind of crazy and different, like dreams are. And so I'll be reading a few of those. And the other influence is art. I studied art while I was there, and I've always been very interested in visual journal keeping. I have written journals, and I have visual journals too, which after I read, I'll show some of my artist books. And the other influence is books. I've always loved books, reading books. When I got older, writing books. Gary, my second husband, is a bookseller, so we were just selling books, making books, altering books, just everything about books. And if you've been to our house, you can confirm that we have a lot of books there. So anyway, I'm going to start with a new poem. No, I'm not. I'm going to start with a book, some poems from Splitting Hard Ground. And I'm glad you mentioned that cover photograph. I love that photograph. I found it online. I had a vision of, once I knew the title, that I wanted it like a crack in the ground, you know, for splitting hard ground. And I found this photograph. It's a Taoist photographer who goes up in the air in these little contraptions, like a little, I don't know what you'd call it, a chair with a, you know, a blade. And so it's an aerial view that you don't, and you can see that bridge there is just a fine white line, but it's such an amazing photo. It, you know, it captures that from the air. So I'd like to start with a poem called Seeds. I should mention also that I did live in New Mexico for about 10 years. We had a bookstore there just prior to moving back to the Northwest. Seeds. Acoma potters crafted bulbous earthen pots to keep precious seeds from mice and insects. When women shook the pots over the earth, seeds fell out through a single tiny hole. Silvery winged thistle, dandelion seeds clog desert winds. In June, summer snow, cottonwood fluff veils the ground. Like walking on clouds or through a fog bank, my feet invisible. When I explored the deserted island of Delos long after fig harvest on the mainland, a hermit fig flush with fruit clung to cistern stones 10 feet down. That elusive fog-nourished seed rooted in mortar sheltered from nagging winds. In life, what sprouts, grows, withers, and dies. Impermanence, the Buddha taught. To think scientists now alter seeds, make sterile what is most fertile. Mulch. Gets sort of the gardening warming up. Mulch. The garbage truck lumbers down the cul-de-sac, stuffed with the detritus of my life, old poems, cuttings. When I lived in Benares, Kathmandu, and even on Crete, there were no garbage trucks, no men to jump down, lift and dump 50-gallon cans crammed with styrofoam, plastic, rotting table scraps. Then I recycled everything. Into an emptied beer bottle, a merchant poured through a tin funnel freshly pressed olive oil or kerosene for the lantern. Fish and lentils wrapped in newsprint I unfolded and read if it was in English. News wasn't old a month or two later. Ravens, rats, and dung beetles made meals of inedible scraps and foul droppings. Holy cows wandered Varanasi alleys, eating paper litter and mango leaves. Today I pull weeds after summer rains. Dandelion and amaranth grow and seed overnight. I kneel on wet ground, inhale rich mulch of cottonwood leaf molderings, as if exotic ambergris or frankincense. The water carriers is next. It's part of a series of 5 poems called The Water Carriers, and the poem that was in the broadside is also in that series. This is the second poem. The Water Carriers. No rains one June, the monsoon is late. In Darjeeling, the barrel under the downspout beside the door is bone dry. The village faucet runs an hour each day. I line up to fill a single bucket, all I can carry, a measure of my strength. In Manali, in the Kulu Valley, I hire a water boy who balances by rope 2 10-gallon Dalda lard tins from a yoke across his shoulders, then walks a half-mile to the spring. Once a week, I follow him. What joy to stand under a cool mountain trickle or patiently collect a bucket full to splash over swelling body, tin cup by tin cupful. What I'd give then for a steamy tub of scalding water. Okay, dragging the river, 40. This is also from that series, Dragging the River. This is set in New Mexico. Lusty desert rains all weekend. At dusk, choppers circled 4 bridges over the Rio, searching for a boy swept away in the suddenly swollen waters. Rescuers, binoculars aimed low, scanned the water's tree-draggled banks. Out back as I weed the blackberry patch, words like dragged, pulled, and swept away haunt and disturb. Swept sounds too neat, as if death wields a broomstick. Pulled like lulled, a siren's sexy drone. Dragged has a slovenly ring. Words lost on a missing child. Next morning, a police boat drags the silt-thick bed. Above sky blades reverberate. The pounding death beat thickens my pulse, severs my breath. Water ransacks, battered stumps and stones. I want to crack hard mud like a ground squirrel, burrow a deep chamber under the Acequia Canal. So the next 3 poems are dedicated to my son, Willie, who was born in Nepal, in Kathmandu, but tragically passed away about 15 years ago in an automobile accident. So I dedicate these poems to him. Okay, 60. My son strapped to my back. Nepali women carry their babies behind. When walking or tilling the rice paddies, their hands are free to weed and sow. No fancy carriers or shoulder slings. A long cloth works best. While pregnant in Kathmandu, as my belly grew, added weight threw my balance off. So I wrapped a long Tibetan yogi's cloth around my hips to ease an aching back. After my son was born, I placed him in the coarse handloom cloth, fringed at the ends, smelling of wood smoke, juniper, and musty, dank caves. I swung the bundle behind, wrapped the ends over my shoulders, then knotted them under his seat. The baby slept when I walked. I hummed in his ears. His breath dampened my blouse, warmed my skin. The rhythm of steps comforted him. 25 years pass, a lifetime to some. The yogi's cloth disappeared long ago in one move or another. Now my son is gone too. In the airport in Chicago, waiting to change planes, another heavy bundle strapped to my back, this time in a backpack, his ashes carefully packed in a hand-carved sandalwood box. Heirloom. Winter weather 20 above, giant seed catalog crammed in the mailbox. By a pinon fire, I dream of summer, peaches simmer on the stove. Bouquets liven the cover. I can almost smell peonies, carnations. Inside pages of hybrids, heirlooms, red beauties, honey goldens, sweet sugars. Contraptions to choose from, seed shellers, slicers, sprouters, steamers, composters, stoners, fruit pickers, aerators, cultivators. 8 years, different climate zones, and still this catalog follows me, my son's name on the label. He ordered seeds this summer before the accident. I'll plant a garden for you, Mom, in the backyard. What would he have planted? Grapes, pomegranates, broccoli. Without him, winter languishes, vines bereft of berries. The garden fallow, adobe earth parched to brick. If I make a resolution for the budding year, it should be to order seeds. With luck, they'll get in the ground. Even if I can't harvest what I sow, hard work has its own rewards. Who doesn't love a seedling splitting hard ground? And what rises? In the dream of moving water, my small raft bucks the current like salmon at Seattle's Ballard Locks. Downstairs I feed the cats, let Bodie out to stalk the sun, trounce crumpled dogwood leaves. Garbage day, carry bottles to the curb, wash up last night's dishes. A week of rain, now sun in the dining room windows lights the eastern corner. I settle down, a cup of ginger tea, an open book on my lap. On top of the bookcase filled with Sufi stories and folk tales from Spain, wrapped in a delicate Japanese silk scarf, hand-painted with scenes of cranes and curly foam-tipped waves, rests Willie's box. Wild pheasant feathers gathered in the woods, and a few shells decorate the top. Is it a present or an artwork? My poet friend Janice asks. My son's ashes, I tell her. I like to keep him near. I rise and stand near the window, inhaling the sun. 8 years gone, yet this morning he's here in the light, in the warmth, not under the earth or blowing in the wind. Like milk boiling over the rim of a pan on the stove, or the ginger tea frothing up the sides of the pot, something wells, sweeps up from a place I can't see, jars the meridians of my spine, tears of being, mysterious exclamations for the sun, for this day, this life. This is how love lives. This is how I pray. Let's take a little step here. So I'd like to read a couple of new poems. This first one is set in our bookstore. Let's make sure I got all the pages here. Let's see. I think I might be missing a page there. No, that's it. Complete. The Poet's Couch. At the bookstore, spring cleaning begins after New Year. Books crowd walls, tables, cupboards, and closets. There are never enough shelves. What can't fit on shelves towers off the floor. We look around. Where to add shelves? Fiction, poetry, Southwest, and art sections all need more space. Even the kitchen's crammed with cookbooks. At monthly readings, poets clutch books, briefcases, harmonicas, coffee mugs, cell phones, notebooks, and glasses, then settle on the old Navy couch by the window. The couch, we exclaim in unison. We'll move the couch to add new shelves. Reluctantly, we load the cumbersome thing upright onto a wheeled cart to maneuver between boxes in the narrow aisle. Out on the street, a large free sign beckons drivers on a sleepy Saturday morning on 4th Street, the old Route 66. Traffic is slow but steady. Anyone need a couch? A poet's couch? Within the hour, a beat-up Cadillac rumbles to the curb. A man shifts to park, then idles the engine while a woman steps out, leans back into navy foam cushions, imagining perhaps stretching out for an afternoon nap or crocheting a woolen scarf while balancing a bowl of pozole or minestrone on a TV tray. She nods approval, but a Cadillac is no pickup. How are they going to? Without speaking, they lift in unison, slide one end of the couch onto the back bumper, and then shove up, and over the rear window until it rests atop the vehicle like a canoe above a duck hunter's pickup. They didn't bring rope. Never mind. The car waits for a clearing, then creeps into traffic. The driver, mindful of the teetering load, eases over a speed bump. At home, after the couple slinks off to the warmth of their bed, voices may slowly rise from the depths of the couch, like spirits on All Souls' Night. We heard them, softly at first, barely audible whisperings echo through walls. Strains of Dickinson, Sexton, and Plath filter under doors, pillows. Dreaming minds mouth words of longing, the soul's mysterious cravings. We moved our bookstore from Albuquerque to Hawthorne, where it was for, until last May, anthology booksellers. And so we're used to books and, packing and everything involved with that. Okay, I want to read. We also had a bookstore in upstate New York before we moved to New Mexico. And the space next door became empty, and a lot of our musician friends were urging us to open up a club. They wanted to play, at a jazz club. So we said, well, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't we do it? And so the Uptown was born. We did a lot of renovations, and it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of musicians that live within about 50 or 60 miles of Kingston. We were near Woodstock and Kingston. And we had people touring. We had the Mongolian throat singers and the all kinds of. We had a Fluxus night and lots of jazz, Celtic poetry, publishing network. We were pretty busy. This one is called Live from the Uptown. To jazz up decrepit, abandoned department store, we dragged up wood panels from 2 floors down, built a bar where Woodstock kids once bought Cub Scout uniforms. Recycled blue velvet curtain draped the stage, rows of cast iron refurbished theater seats, exposed brick walls. The Uptown was totally hands-on, a do-it-yourself nightclub. Booker, bouncer, publicist, and sound guy. That was Gary, after working the bookstore next door 10 to 5. I tended bar, hosted art crawls, readings, and wine tastings. Guinness, Sam Adams on tap, Chill Duval, and Pilsner Urquell. Bowls of salt peanuts, wafting aroma of chocolate chip cookies fueled intermission crowds. Once before a show, Dave Burrell, flat on his back under the Baldwin. Man, what happened? It's cool, I'm connecting. Later, he banged those keys so hard, 3 clanked to the floor. That baby grand took loads of abuse, kept tuner John busy on emergency post-concert runs. One player propped the lid open, plucked hammered tender strings with crude wood mallets. Hot Tuna's Harvey Sorgan showed up sans drums late after a late night gig, threw his black leather jacket over a chair seat to jam on stage. Jardulo put us on the free jazz circuit, standing room only for Dewey. And Terry conjured the sweetest sugar cakes and then blew us away on the A train. Other nights, Fathead, Joe Lovano, Don Byron drove upriver or down off the mountain to sit and listen in. During a blizzard, vocalist Laurel Massey's fans couldn't get out of their driveways. So 6 of us clapped so loud, if you tuned into her WBAI show that night, you'd swear she had a house full of diehards. Live from the Uptown. How sweet that sounds. This one is called Seeing Blue. At the paint store to pick a new color for the kitchen, something fresh, vibrant. What about blue? I say, remembering cowering glacier and last night's dream. Not turquoise or baby blue. Indigo is too dark, cobalt too heavy. Color chart names leap off the counter, conjuring places, dredging memories. Not the lapis of a lover's gift, idling in jewelry box with broken clasp. No blue veins, hypothermic lips or bruises. No blue tracks, blood, shoes, or moon. We didn't find Blue Lake, Sacred Taos watershed, or Blue Hole's desert oasis. No delicate robin's egg, no ribbons, blue stockings, jeans, or collars. How about an ancient oceanic blue, teal, cerulean, or royal blue? Let's cook under a Mediterranean blue, I say. The blue of morning mists, Nautilus, Neptune's breath. Our kitchen galley will float like an Aegean ship. Mariner, aquamarine, peacock, jay, kingfisher. When I close my eyes, Istanbul's tiled blue mosque, Vishnu's ghostly tint, and Shiva's blue poison-filled throat. The hardest choice comes last. Earthly heavens, divine blue of a virgin's robe, blue rapture, celestial blue, or just plain wondrous. Of course, when we had to sell the house, we had to paint the blue. Nobody couldn't sell it with a blue kitchen, but we liked it. Okay. I'm going to switch and read some of the dreams, a couple dreams from the Night Travel series. This one's called More Night Travels to Tibet, and it's a lovely little book printed in Nepal on handmade lokta paper. And I'll read a couple of these. Oh, it also has some illustrations of animals, kind of woodblock prints that are came out really nicely, I think. Okay, see-through bags. There's no plastic in Tibet. I trade long rolls of plastic sandwich bags for frankincense and myrrh. I demonstrate a bag for every use to store chilies, aspirin, leaves, and stones. Suddenly everyone demands one. I do not have enough to go around. 3 lamas explain they could keep rainwater, powdered gold, and spirit cookies in see-through bags. I wire home, need more bags. A shipment is airlifted from Delhi, but it comes apart in the air. Thousands of plastic sandwich bags parachute to earth, and the people go crazy catching them with butterfly nets. When I had that dream, and when I lived in Nepal in the 70s, they didn't have any plastic bags, so it really was kind of a rarity. But now it's just the opposite. They have too many plastic bags and plastic water bottles and garbage. And Nepal, after that earthquake too, it's just such a resilient community, working hard to restore all those amazing temples and architectural treasures that were affected by that. Okay, let's see. Dry humping on stage. I sit in the middle of a large auditorium. Every seat is taken. Up front, people sit on blankets spread on the wooden floor. The master of ceremonies calls out my name. Welcome, he croons through the microphone. You've been selected to partner with, and his arm swings around to introduce Dorje, a Tibetan Lama, sitting cross-legged on a dragon carpet behind him. The Lama's eyes are half closed, feigning disinterest or maybe sly confidence. I walk on stage, take a bow, and then sit down face to face on Dorje's lap. We kiss vigorously, then start dry humping in all kinds of crazy positions, like those found in an outdated, discarded Kama Sutra text. As the MC calls out the names, we move into the positions. Raging peacocks, firewalkers on speed, dragon mouth hissing, queen bee churning honey. Yeah, these are real dreams, actually. I'll just read one more, and then I'll show you some of my artist books if I have time. Flying carpet. At the village chai shop, the chaiwala, tea maker, churns a pot of salty yak butter tea. He serves me where I sit on a carpet on the floor. Then he adjusts a knob of some kind, and suddenly we're airborne. The carpet cruises out the door and hovers 3 feet above an ancient caravan trail. The driver struggles to gain altitude and then halts at a stop sign. Take it higher, I urge. Cut loose, fly like Aladdin on his magic carpet. He never stopped for signals or hovered in traffic. When I look down at the carpet, I see the problem. It's ugly. Instead of a beautiful Oriental Persian carpet, I'm sitting on a cheap shag rug. It's not even square or rectangular, just a frayed coffee-stained remnant of the cheapest polyester wall-to-wall gray shag torn in an odd shape. Just my luck, I think, stuck on a low-flying, funky shag remnant cruising slower than an ox cart. We're barely skimming the ground. I can walk faster in my sleep. Okay. Well, I wanted to introduce my last book, which is actually a catalog of my artist books. And so anyway, I got the 5-minute signal, so I'll do it quick. There's different, it's all color catalog books, and I have some to show you. This is an altered book on the cover. It's called Bind, Alter, Fold. And I brought, this one is called 40 Pencil Stubs. And it's, it has a little book with it that it talks about, it tells the story, and it's kind of a sad story because I found all these pencil stubs at a garage sale, and the teacher was an art teacher at a public school, and they lost funding, so she lost her job, and so she was selling her pencils. But what really amazed me was that some of them were so tiny that, you know, the kids had sharpened them all over the years, and just made such use of those pencils. This is called a piano hinge book, and there's a little where you can open it up, and it has different parts of a print, and then you can also, in the back, it has a little secret compartment that it's kind of a fun form. And sorry? Did you make all of these? I made them, yeah. And I think I mentioned visual journals before, but this is an example of, it's called Visual Journals from New York to New Mexico. And you can look at it, they're different, I do the collage of, you know, readings and things that I've been to. It's all autobiographical, using the found topography and imagery from wherever. But this is an accordion book, so it actually opens up and gives you kind of, one person said it's like billboards. It kind of gives you a sense of things. So I have these from, most places I've lived, I guess. And this one is to Hanuman, who's a Hindu, the monkey god who's very strong and flies through the air. And this opens up to be a carousel book with little windows that you can peek in. So that has a nice sculptural look to it. And I guess the last one is a tribute to Ambrose Bierce and his Devil's Dictionary. Have you familiar with that? And it's called Deviltry, and it's a flag book. And it's upside down. I can't do that. It has, different names, Lucifer, Hades, Diabolic, Inferno, kind of different deviltry names and places. So I'll just gonna end with reading the introduction. In the introduction, I list 30 ways to look at an artist book, and in a sense, it could also be you could think of it as 30 ways to also look at a poem. And I won't read them all, but I'll just read a few to give you a sense. So this is what an artist book is to, from my point of view as the artist. The book as artifact, the book as celebration, the book as chance discovery, the book as found object, the book as visual narrative, the book as sacred space, the book as visual conundrum, the book as bibliomancer's tool, the book as ritual object, the book as environment, the book as portable gallery, the book as object poem, the book as intimate museum, the book as personal narrative, the book as poetic cartography, finally, the book as a unique art object. Okay, well, I guess thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, do you usually have a question and answer?
We have questions and answers, if there are things that people want.
I can ask you the questions and you can give me the answers? No, doesn't work like that.
We could do that. I suppose there's so many questions. Maybe I'll ask you about New Mexico.
Sure.
Why did you go to New Mexico, and what did you like most about it?
Well, after being from the West Coast, and then moving to upstate New York, where there's like lots of snow and icicles and very high taxes and weather, New Mexico and the warm desert was very glorious. I mean, it was a wonderful change, and we were interested in moving back to the West, but we weren't quite able to move all the way west. We thought, well, why don't we try New Mexico? And so we moved our bookstore there, and it was wonderful. We really liked it. A lot of poets, good poets lived there. The native pueblos. There's over 20 pueblos with all their traditions, and you can visit, and it just has a lot of ancient spiritual energy in the land and the history. My next book is going to have a lot of desert poems.
Thank you.
Did you study art formally and book arts?
Well, in New Mexico, I found the Book Arts Guild, which was great because I'd always wanted to study book arts, but I was just never able to do it. I know when I lived in Seattle, there were all those printers up in Port Townsend and lots of artist books. And so there's a lot of good artists there. And I was also in the Santa Fe Book Arts group. And they had shows, and we taught each other. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. It was something I wanted to do for many years, so it came together that nicely.
Do you have a bookstore now?
Well, our bookstore is online, anthology booksellers. Actually, I think we have some cards. Put some cards on the table. It's called Anthology Booksellers, but the website is actually AsakiaBooksellers.com because that's what we had in New Mexico, and we haven't changed that name of that. But yeah, you can pick up a card or yeah. We have lots of poetry, thousands, and a lot of small press. So art, history.
The books that you showed at the end, are those like single edition? You only have one of each? Made more than one of each of those?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to make multiples, but I do like to keep them. That's the trouble. So if I can't really sell them unless I make a two. But I do have, I did make an extra one of Deviltry, and I could make more of these, but I haven't done that. It's kind of more interesting to just keep going on making new designs.
How did the idea of creating these unusual books come about? And when did it happen?
Well, I should have mentioned that. I have them divided into 5 categories.
And how many do you have?
How many books?
Yeah.
Well,
No,
there's
not the poetry books, but the
artist books.
Yes.
Well, there's 38 in here, and I don't know. I probably maybe 80 different kinds. But I'm still working on. So the visual journals is a series. So I have, the New Mexico journals, Seattle journals, Houston journals, and then then there's just sort of a regular artist book category, and then there's altered books. So I've done, this was like an altered book, and other forms. And then I have a series, the Himalayan Travelogues. So, because I took a lot of notes and did drawings and different things, so I want to, and it's hard to just kind of keep things in a file folder, or what do you want to look at it. So that's my inspiration, is to, make these things that you can actually look through. And then the final category is book art objects. And this, for example, is called Cinderella's Dance Card. It's more sculptural, these last ones. And then the pencils. Pencil box is like that. A couple of others. So, yeah, sometimes I think of a topic. Other times I think of a binding I want to try, or a lot of times I make the binding just to learn it and then figure out what to put in it later. That's what I usually do. Because I don't know, you don't want to make a mistake, and, you know, you want to make sure it's, yeah.
Do you ever dream of something and then make it?
It's a good question. I have dreamed of projects that I would like to make, and I've painted dreams, image, you know. Yeah, I do. I do dream of. It's not necessarily the binding, but it's the content. You know, like some of the Tibetan material, and yeah, just different idea. In fact, the census taker was the title, collection of stories. That came in a dream because I was the census taker assigned to Tibet, and the airfare was paid by a government grant. And so the plane is skimming over rock gorges and glaciers, and then the pilot says, "Okay, are you ready? Get prepared to jump. There's no airports in Tibet." So I jump, you know, and I had a gathered skirt, and it, I descend, and I, oh, just in time. But then I look down, and it's like Niagara Falls. You know, I'm headed right down there, but somebody turns it off like sprinklers. And so anyway, so that's an example of stories that, that was the census taker title.
What prompted you to do the tribute book for Hanuman?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Well, I had this great comic book with a lot of the,
Hanuman comic?
yeah, with a lot of the images. And I had done some previous, like from India, the Sanskrit, the Hindi alphabet. I did where is it? The flag book of all from a children's. Where is that? Here, this one. This is from a children's primer. It's called My Hindi Primer. And I love the colors. So it's yeah, if I find...
And in India they do have wonderful like comic books for the Mahabharata.
Right.
They are fabulous comic books. So I can
Yeah, right. So that was part of, you know, I'm attracted. I like color, you know, it's kind of in the books and paper.
You need another shelf for all that paper, right?
Yeah, I know, right. Yeah, you got that. Okay, last question. I think,
I really enjoyed your night travels, your dreams, and your poems from Tibet. But have you written any from New Mexico because of the strong energy that's there? Or
dreams or...
yeah, your dreams.
I have poems and essays. Not so many dreams that I can think of. I'd have to go back and look at them. I keep dream journals, but.
Are you ever tempted to put something in there that wasn't there?
What was that?
Are you ever tempted to put something in it that was not in your dream?
As a story, in the story? Oh, sure. I mean, that's, that's the beauty of fiction, is that, you can... But actually, most of my dreams are so crazy that I don't need to. If you like the surreal kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Oh, thank you all. Yeah. Thank you.